When I started Pokemon Gold for this retrospective, I was particularly nervous about one thing. This was going to be my first Nuzlocke, but I don't like permadeath in video games. Even playing Shining Force as a little kid, I never understood why my party members would be unusable if they died. I didn't realize that I could just revive them in a chapel or town. I was a bit of a dodo bird. But I've also played many Fire Emblem games, and I always kept my party alive even if it meant resetting and starting a chapter over, as annoying as that can be. Yet, in modern games that come bundled with a casual option that removes permadeath, I always kept it enabled because I do like the challenge, and it feels right to have to navigate around permanent losses. Keeping everyone alive is part of the difficulty. It's about mitigating and minimizing risk. And in games like Fire Emblem, there's always a way to do so. The game is balanced around it. But in a Pokemon Nuzlocke, there is always risk, because it's a self-imposed challenge, breaking the boundary of developer-intended difficulty. As I've been rediscovering these old Pokemon games through my retrospective series, I've realized that they aren't quite the way I remember. Both Blue and Yellow were far easier than when I was a kid, and so I decided to try a Nuzlocke for the first time as I played through Gold, a game I haven't played since the early 2000s. I would later find out that Gold and Silver are not exactly the best games for a first Nuzlocke due to a variety of factors, but that didn't stop me, and it was an incredible journey. But first, the rule set. As I was researching Nuzlocke rules, I found that it was an incredibly customizable experience. It is a self-imposed challenge run after all. It allowed me to tune the game's difficulty to what I felt was challenging while still remaining reasonable. If a Pokemon faints, it dies permanently and is placed in my graveyard box. Only the first wild Pokemon in each area or route can be caught, and if I fail to catch it, the opportunity is lost. I used a guide to keep track of what I caught and where. Unfortunately, the site went out of service right near the end of my run. It didn't end up mattering, but that would have been very annoying in the middle of the game. I keep meticulous notes on all my playthroughs regardless, so I could have managed. It would have just been a little frustrating to sift through it all. Sorry, sidetrack. Anyways, I did allow myself the duplicate clause. If the first Pokemon I encounter in a new route is a duplicate of an already caught mon, I can continue to search until I find a new one, as long as I don't catch any of the duplicates. I think this is a really important handicap to have because otherwise my box would be filled with Pidgey, Zubat, and Tentacool. With that said, it does lead to a little bit of a hack in certain late game areas that kind of felt like cheating, though I didn't realize that until I got there. It's also fully possible I could have missed those opportunities. I'll talk about that later. I also allowed the Shiny clause, which allows me to catch any shiny Pokemon I encounter without it counting against an area or route, but that didn't matter because I didn't find any shinies. Well, aside from the red Gyarados, but that doesn't count. Oh, and of course, I need to nickname every Pokemon I catch. I'm not good at this, so my wife and son provided a number of names. I also decided to have a level cap rule. This isn't a handicap, actually it makes the game harder, but I felt it was important because if I could just grind infinitely for every gym boss and the Elite Four, it wouldn't feel like much of a challenge. However, I was warned before I started that Gold and Silver have a very tricky and confusing level curve. I didn't fully understand what these commenters meant at first. I assumed there were dramatic level spikes at certain points of the game, and there is one going from blue to red, but what they actually meant is that the boss levels go up and down and all around throughout the game. So as I was planning out my run, I went with an adapted level cap based on the Johto gym leaders, Lance, Blue, and then finally Red. Additionally, I'm allowing myself to have 3 lives, or rather, I'm allowing myself to have 2 resets that I can use whenever I want. Once I use one, I'm locked into that challenge without the option to grind or swap Pokemon. This was mostly a factor of time rather than difficulty. I have limited time to play and work on this channel, so having to regrind a bunch of new Pokemon after a particularly brutal battle sounded problematic at the beginning. I even considered modding in infinite rare candies, and while I'm aware that is commonly used in the Nuzlocke community, it felt like going against the spirit of the game, seeing as it's not a more challenging ROM hack, but just a regular difficulty Pokemon game. But I would come to regret this rule. Not the limit on resets, but allowing them in the first place. Once again, I'll get to that. Oh, and I'm playing on set mode. but that's kind of a given. Those are the rules. Now it's time for the journey. Upon starting the game, I'm immediately reminded of the time mechanic. I wasn't really able to engage with it on account of playing a Nuzlocke challenge, but time pervades a surprising amount of Gen 2. I think I'll talk more about time and its gameplay implications in my upcoming Crystal video. I choose Cyndaquil as my starter and name it Zuko. I recently finished rewatching Avatar: The Last Airbender, the original animated one. I don't really like that I have to clarify that. I thought I had it all planned out. Bugsy has bug types, easy pickings for Zuko here. I just gotta get through Faulkner. Flying types are not a particular threat to fire types, so this seemed best. It was, of course, shortly before the gym challenge that I realized both Faulkner's Pokémon know Mud Slap. Oh dear. The beginning of the game is very stressful. There is not a lot I can do to mitigate risk. Crits are gonna crit, and I don't even have access to very many restoratives, though Cyndaquil holding a berry really helps. I spend a lot more money on potions than I normally would. Another issue is the level cap. Faulkner's cap is level 9, which Zuko quickly reaches. At least I managed to beat my rival, whom I, of course, name Dodo. And I also managed to catch a Hoot Hoot, whom I name Owlbert. My wife always has great name suggestions. I slowly inch my way toward Violet City. I managed to catch a Zubat in Dark Cave, whom I named Count, after Count Von Count. My son loves Sesame Street. Unfortunately, I was hoping for a Geodude. That would have been an easy answer to Faulkner, for whom Cyndaquil was a poor choice, or at least I thought as such. I went in thinking it made sense to have Owlbert take out Pidgey, I use a potion when Pidgeotto came out, and try to have Owlbert solo the gym. I soon realized that would mean a death, so I switch in Zuko. I intended to lower Pidgeotto's accuracy repeatedly with Smokescreen, but it doesn't matter. Zuko dies. And I reset. Yes, I reset on my first gym. It counts as one of my lives, and now I'm locked into making Faulkner work with what I have. I could have just reset the whole game, and that is what many people do, but there's no guarantee it wouldn't have happened again. There's not even a guarantee I would have caught a Hoot Hoot. This was the first time I realized that I need to think outside of the box to succeed in a Nuzlocke. I start with Zuko, and because I do, it becomes evident that Mud Slap does very little damage, even when hitting super effectively. I can't say it's a bad move because lowering accuracy is always helpful, but it has a base power of 20. I lowered Pidgey's accuracy, swapped in Owlbert, knocked it out, lowered Pidgeotto's attack, and then swapped back to Zuko to finish it off. It was tricky and took some planning, but I figured it out. Onwards toward Azalea Town. I catch a Ghastly in Sprout Tower and name it Luigi. I'm really excited about this. Ghost is very useful and an uncommon type. While it would never become a Gengar, a Haunter will be a strong Pokemon in the mid and late game. I was lucky with the encounter chance. I also catch a Wooper on Route 32 and name it Mudkip, with a question mark. And then it almost dies against a Rattata. Made my heart skip a beat. Moving through Sprout Tower, Ruins of Alph, and Route 32 is very stressful. It was like carefully stepping through glass. Every battle is dangerous, especially the trainers. I used Bulbapedia to plan out every encounter in the game. I catch a Geodude in Union Cave and name it Asteroid while Zuko evolves into Quilava. Then I catch a Rattata on Route 33, whom I name Maestro. We enter Azalea Town and it's time for Slowpoke Well, our first encounter with Team Rocket. They're stealing Slowpoke tails because apparently they sell for a lot. Gold and Silver have a much more fleshed out story than Red, Blue, and Yellow, but you still kinda stumble upon it. Though you do get actual recognition for what you're doing, and your rival does have actual character development. Once again, I suggest you read the Pokemon Adventures manga. The Gen 2 arc is really interesting. Slowpoke Well is easier than I anticipated, though it makes me realize that poison is very scary because of damage outside of battle. From this point on, I always need to have antidotes on me. Oh, and I also catch a Magikarp and name it Money. This will be important later, trust me. Now it's time for the Azalea Gym, and my original plan sees fruition. Zuko completely sweeps the entire gym. Hey, is that a hint at double battles? It's incredibly easy, which is a relief after all the stress built up getting here. Dodo, on the other hand, is intense. Croconaw is the problem. My team has no good answer to a water type, but does have a lot of weaknesses to it. Not to mention, Zubat can constantly confuse and Ghastly can paralyze. This is a crazy fight. In order to beat Croconaw, I have to lower its accuracy 3 times, paralyze it, lower its defense twice, and confuse it. Then Count, of all Pokemon, takes it out. Regardless, I still could have lost Albert and Count at any point. A crit would have ended it. At this point, the game starts to get a little easier. Not easy, mind you, easier. I have an established team with a variety of moves, and it's starting to become a game of XP management and preparation. I get into a groove that is about to be interrupted. It's time to head toward Goldenrod City, and Ilex Forest is up first. It's filled with bug types, which provides easy leveling for a few of my Pokemon. I also get the Headbutt TM, opening up new encounter options by hitting trees. I also get a Charcoal, a held item that increases fire-type damage. I always ignored held items as a kid. Honestly, I never even paid attention to them even back when Scarlet and Violet were released. I never understood just how powerful they are. In Gen 2, Charcoal increases fire damage by 10%. That doesn't seem like much, but if it's the difference between a 1-shot as opposed to a 2-shot or a 2-shot as opposed to a 3-shot, it saves an entire turn of potential damage, status effects, healing, or even an unfortunate crit. Held items, both passive and consumables, would become a constant metagame for my Nuzlocke. I have a newfound appreciation for them, though that has been building since I started watching competitive Pokemon a few years ago. Next is Route 34, and it has a lot going on. I catch a Drowsy, which I name Nightmare. While I don't use it, it's a very important catch regardless. I have a surprisingly complex battle against a Psyduck, again, because I don't have any good answers to water yet. I also find some trainer battles that are restricted to nighttime. This feels like a problem at first. I want to be able to use all the good XP I can get. And I'm not at the point where endless grinding is 100% safe due to how low level my Pokemon are. It's slow, and an unfortunate crit could cause real problems. I know that I can change the clock at any point, but again, that feels like going against the spirit of the game. I do eventually swing back around when I'm actually playing in the evening. Anyway, Goldenrod. Now that we've entered the city, let's talk about trading. Obviously, trading with other players is completely disallowed in a Nuzlocke, but in-game trades are different. It's just another form of encounter, but there are a couple extra rules that people tend to follow. First of all, it counts as the encounter for the area in which you trade, in this case Goldenrod City. Second of all, you can't replace your previous capture, so you pay an extra encounter in order to do the trade, but sometimes it's worth it. In-game trades often give you access to a rare Pokemon or one that you can't obtain for quite a while after. Traded Pokemon also get boosted XP. I trade Nightmare for a Machop named Muscle. That's why catching Nightmare was so important. I really got lucky because Muscle is the answer to a particularly notorious gym leader. I clear the gym trainers and do a little leveling until Muscle is capped at 20. Whitney starts with Clefairy. I use Focus Energy hoping for a crit with Karate Chop, but this is a mistake. I should have just attacked because Double Slap actually does some serious damage and absolutely could have killed Muscle. I end up proccing the Goldberry that I was really saving for Miltank, and I have to use a potion for safety as well. Speaking of, it's time for Miltank, a Pokemon that struck fear into many a 90s kid, including me. I'm most afraid of Rollout, but it turns out Stomp is the real killer. It does so much damage and can cause a flinch. Muscle at least resists Rollout. Even so, it can spiral out of control, and Muscle would have died if not for a clutch crit at the end. This is another example of having to think outside the box to beat this Nuzlocke. I never even engaged with in-game trades as a kid. It was probably because of that episode on the SS Anne. In fact, it wasn't until Legend ZA that I did any in-game trades at all. I struggled so much with Whitney when I was younger, but always, right there, in Goldenrod City, the developers hid an answer to an otherwise brutal encounter. That's pretty cool, and shows a level of thoughtfulness on their part, even if it takes some exploration and experimentation to find. But now I do a little more in Goldenrod City and set out for Ecruteak, clearing out trainers, catching Pokemon, wishing I happened to pass through the national park on a Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday so I could get a chance at a rare bug type. I could have saved the encounter if I really wanted to. Things are going well. Hindsight is immediately 2020, because what was I thinking? Well, I'll tell you what I was thinking. Luigi was falling behind. He needed more opportunities to gain XP, and switching every battle is very unsafe, unlike a casual playthrough. The Abras provided solid XP, and I thought for sure Luigi could survive at least one hit from Kadabra, and there was even a chance I could paralyze it, but I was wrong, and Luigi paid the price. This is an important moment. I was getting complacent, but this reminds me that I have to respect every encounter. I create a graveyard box, place Luigi inside, and move on. I battle a shockingly dangerous Krabby, and I finally reach Ekrutik. There's actually a lot to do here. I start with the Kimono Girls. I'm pretty scared of them, but they end up not being bad at all, and they reward me with Surf, an always welcome move. Then I head to the Burned Tower, and it's time for Dodo. Again, Croconaw is just so stressful. After some back and forth, Muscle takes it out. I'm glad I keep Muscle healthy because there is a crit. Thankfully, Haunter, Magnemite, and Zubat are easy, and so is the rest of Burned Tower. Mudkip evolves into Quagsire, and I release the legendary beasts in a scene I always loved as a kid. Then I prep for the gym. Morty is scary, and not just because he uses ghost types.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
His team is a minefield of status conditions and dangerous combinations. Lick, Curse, Mean Look, Hypnosis, Dream Eater, and Shadow Ball just to polish it off, a generally strong attack. There's no way to safely switch in on any of his Pokemon. So preparation is king and ground types are key. I teach Mudkip Dig and level Asteroid just a bit until it evolves into Graveler. Here we go. Ghastly immediately uses Curse on Mudkip. This is bad because it deals 25% ticking damage even though Mudkip is underground. Dig takes out Ghastly and it's Haunter next. It uses Nightshade and Mudkip is super low. It's very important that Dig one-shots Haunter because otherwise Mudkip would have died to Curse. It doesn't deal damage when an opponent faints, like all other damage over time effects. Morty sends out Gengar, Mudkip needs to switch, and there's no safe switch-in. Yes, I brought Maestro as an intentional sacrifice to get a safe switch-in on Gengar. Okay, this is a video game. It doesn't matter. And yet I still feel bad. Awful, actually. And this is why the nicknames are so important. Nuzlocks are all about calculations, planning, preparation, all of that. But they're also about accepting loss, mitigating risk, and trying to make it through with as many Pokemon as possible. All to achieve the ultimate goal of reaching the credits, or in my case, beating Red. Intentional sacrifice is a completely valid way to play the game, but nicknames add a bit of reluctance to that. I named Rattata after a character in one of my son's favorite books. He asked me to read it to him on a regular basis, and I sent Maestro to his grave to get a defense drop and one safe switch-in, but it was not in vain. Zuko jumps in and uses Mud Slap to deal solid damage and lower Gengar's accuracy. Then it's just Haunter. I return to the Pokemon Center and I place Maestro in the graveyard, and a piece of my humanity with it. At this point, the game's level curve gets a little wonky. I have a choice to go east toward Mahogany Town or west toward Olivine and Cianwood cities. Mahogany and Cianwood both have gyms with roughly the same level Pokemon at 31 and 30 respectively. Olivine has a cap of 5 levels higher at 35, but you're meant to go there right after Cianwood, and technically Cianwood is slightly lower than Mahogany. Of course, this is just the developers giving the player choice. They weren't balancing around any future community-built challenge runs. But for a Nuzlocke, this means a weird order for the next bit of the game. I'll start by clearing everything through Cianwood, including the lighthouse. I should have a couple level 30 Pokemon by then, at which point I'll beat the gym. Then I'll head to Mahogany Town. I'll clear the Lake of Rage event, clear the Rocket HQ with Lance, and clear the gym. Then I'll head back to Olivine and clear that gym. It's a lot of backtracking, but you can get Fly at Cianwood after beating Chuck, so it doesn't really matter. So I head toward Olivine City and miss a meal tank. Aww. Mudkip has a close call with a Slowpoke, and then I get lucky and catch a Magnemite, which I named CERN, like the Super Collider. Finally, I have a solid answer to water types. I start leveling it right away. The lighthouse is huge for this. When I arrive in Olivine City, Dodo shows up and I panic a little. Thankfully, it wasn't a battle. I keep moving towards Cyanwood City, and CERN stocks are rising fast, but I need training for Owlbert, who is going to be important for Chuck. I surf across the ocean, encounter a Mantine that took all of my Pokeballs. That sure was annoying, but not really a big deal. Water routes are always quite the gauntlet, and this is no exception. I have multiple close calls and run back to the Pokemon Center pretty frequently. I reach Cyanwood and immediately clear the gym trainers. Then it's time for Chuck, whom I'm actually pretty nervous about, specifically Poliwrath. It's a water Pokemon, but CERN is out of the question due to Dynamic Punch. It has Mind Reader to make Dynamic Punch more consistent. It has Hypnosis to be annoying, and Surf is just generally strong. I put my eggs in the Owlbert basket. I try a little setup with Primeape using an X-Defend to boost defense. Owlbert is already pretty bulky, so this gave me a little confidence. Unfortunately, Primeape uses Leer twice, so the bonus is gone. Owlbert takes out Primeape, and I consider swapping to Count. I brought it just in case I needed a sacrifice, but thankfully I chose not to. It felt wrong. I get lucky with multiple Hypnosis misses from Poliwrath, but it does hit with Dynamic Punch. Owlbert gets confused. But I had thought ahead. Before the battle, I gave Owlbert a Bitter Berry, the only one I had, just in case, and it came in clutch. Owlbert whittles Poliwrath down. Safe. Now I head to Mahogany Town. There's not a lot to do on the way, just a few trainers, but I catch a Flaffy named Lady and CERN evolves into Magneton. CERN stocks soar. Muscle evolves into Machoke at the Lake of Rage, and the red Gyarados is easy. Time to quickly take care of Rocket HQ. I think this is a particularly cool part of the game because you join forces with Lance. The fact that you have a companion and are working toward a specific goal gives the story a more solid feel, a bit more staying power. It's still a minor inclusion to the game, and you still pretty much stumble upon the game's events, but at least there's more acknowledgement of what you're doing. Anyway, Rocket HQ is fairly easy. I panic again when Dodo shows up, but it's another false alarm. The executive battles are very easy, and I'm actually a bit worried about staying under level cap for Price, though I do manage it. Speaking of which, the gym is easy, including Price. It's a CERN and muscle sweep. I said easy way too many times in that paragraph. I fly back to Olivine, deliver the medicine, and now it's time for Jasmine. I make a crucial error here. I break one of the tenets I'm playing by. I don't respect the encounter. Jasmine has two Magnemite and a Steelix. The Magnemite are Electric Steel, and Steelix is Steel Ground. I figure between Asteroid, Zuko, and Muscle, I will be able to handle them strictly based on typing, and so I don't level my Pokemon to 35 in order to meet the cap. I completely underestimate Steelix. It has a sky-high defense stat, so Muscle isn't super helpful. Iron Tail is devastating to Asteroid. Rock Throw will always one-shot Zuko. I lose both Zuko and Muscle. This is bad. I don't know how I can continue. That's it. That's my final reset. Had I leveled my Pokemon properly, they probably would have been able to survive. Now I'm on my last life, with a massive amount left in the game. And I'm stuck with my current setup to beat Jasmine. Again, it's time to think outside of the box. Zuko, Asteroid, and Muscle aren't going to cut it. I settle on my rising investment, CERN. After a couple mud slaps from Zuko, I send out CERN and keep Steelix confused. I spam Sonic Boom for a guaranteed 20 damage per hit, and even through a Hyper Potion, CERN takes the win. Breaking records in the stock exchange. But that's it. No more resets, no more safety net. At this point, I regret ever having the rule in the first place. All my Pokemon are well leveled. So much good XP has already been spent with only wild low XP encounters left. Getting another Pokemon up to snuff would take hours of grinding. Unsafe grinding. And I haven't even given myself a chance to learn how to adapt, how to pivot, and I'm heading into what I think is the hardest part of the game. But don't worry, I would be made to learn. After leaving Olivine Gym, I get a call from Professor Elm. Team Rocket has taken over Goldenrod Radio Tower, and it's time for me to save the day. These are some challenging battles, but I'm pretty much safe throughout. Well, until I encounter a self-destructing Weezing that nearly one-shots Mudkip. That was so close, but I do get through with no casualties. I head to the underground to rescue the radio director, and it's time to battle Dodo. I mistakenly start off with Muscle instead of CERN, but thankfully I'm not punished. He's a lot easier this time due to solid coverage. The rest of the fights are easy, and Zuko is getting some serious experience. Back to the radio tower for the final rescue. These are tough fights, especially because the Bulbapedia guide I'm using doesn't indicate which trainers stand where, so starting with the correct Pokemon rarely happens. I run back to the Pokemon Center pretty frequently. The executives seem scarier than I think they actually are. Murkrow surprises me with Nightshade doing much more damage than I thought it would, but Zuko isn't really in any danger. Houndoom is particularly scary, but I got through it unscathed. Team Rocket blasts off again. I make way for Blackthorn City, with lots of leveling on the way. Zuko evolves into Typhlosion in the Ice Path, and then I need to grind. I absolutely cannot underestimate Claire, and yet even the gym trainers are hard, especially the one with multiple Dratini. I have to do even more grinding after because Claire is just gonna be brutal. The problem is that I don't have any good answer to Kingdra, and Claire was, indeed, brutal. Her 3 Dragonair have pretty even but low base stats, so Muscle was pretty safely able to go in and do some damage. It did take a lot of items though, and Muscle had multiple opportunities to die to a crit. It's time for Kingdra, and unfortunately, I need a safe switch-in, but a low-level sacrifice isn't going to cut it. Not only do I need a safe switch-in, I need to lower Kingdra's accuracy as much as possible. Albert has fallen behind, so it's time to spam Flash. But I don't even get a chance. Hyper Beam obliterates Albert, so it falls to Zuko. Mud Slap hits 3 times thanks to a recharge and Kingdra using Smokescreen for some reason. Then Zuko barely survives Surf. I think about it for a long time, but there's no hope. I know what must be done. I need a safe switch in. Mud Slap hits 3 more times, and I start spamming Quick Attack in hopes Zuko will survive, but it isn't meant to be. Surf hits, and Zuko drowns. CERN comes in to finish it off with a safety Thunder Wave and a Thunder Shock. Claire was ruthless, and has left me with extreme losses. I place Albert in the graveyard, and as I'm about to do the same with Zuko, I realize I have never played a Pokemon game without my starter before. Every game I've ever played, whether as a kid, a teenager, or an adult, I've always kept my starter with me at all times, aside from the annoying side quests in ZA that don't allow that. And now I won't be. I play Zuko in the graveyard. Now it's time to pivot. I'm really worried about recovering from this. Any Pokemon I take out of my box will need tons of training, and none of them have the coverage of what I just lost. But it turns out that this is one of the better times to take a big loss, for 3 major reasons. First of all, because I have the red scale from the Lake of Rage, I also have access to the XP share. This will make leveling any Pokemon far easier. Second of all, getting all 8 badges rewards you with the Master Ball from Professor Elm. That's a guaranteed catch for any Pokemon I want, though I first need to get through the Dragon's Den. And actually, this is where the third reason comes into play. This whole time, I've been preparing for this moment without even realizing it. I mentioned earlier that while the duplication clause is extremely important, it's also a bit of a hack, and even felt a bit like cheating. Because I had already caught Money the Magikarp all the way back in Slowpoke Well, the only encounter that would actually count in the Dragon's Den is Dratini. As long as I can successfully catch it, I'm guaranteed a Dratini. And so I do. I catch one and name it Iroh. Then I grab the Dragon's Fang and get the badge from Claire. I fly back to Newbark Town, get the Master Ball from Professor Elm, and head over to the Tin Tower. Once again, because I already caught both Luigi the Ghastly and Maestro the Rattata, may they rest in peace, my guaranteed encounter is Ho-Oh, and I have a Master Ball, and so I catch it and name it Burb. I could have just used repels in Tin Tower, but the duplication clause removed that need, so it's not that much of a hack in this case. Onward to Victory Road. I give Iroh the XP share, catch a Gligar on Route 46, whom I name Bruce, and move on to the tricky battles when crossing into Kanto. There's even a battle with a Blastoise that uses Rain Dance. I didn't realize weather effects had their roots in Gen 2. I thought they hadn't been introduced until Gen 3, though upon thinking back, Jasmine Steelix has Sunny Day. Iroh evolves into Dragonair, and it's time for Victory Road, which is way shorter than in Gen 1. In fact, all the caves are. I wonder if it has something to do with system memory. Anyway, I catch an Onix and name it Dino. My son really likes Onix, and he has this IKEA dinosaur that he named Onix. So that's why I named it Dino. Dodo shows up, and again, he's very easy. Thankfully. Now for more grinding, and I am really regretting not going with infinite rare candies now. The cap for Lance is level 50, but my Pokemon need to be a bit lower than that to prevent overleveling, so I settle on 47. Time for the Elite Four. Will is an easy job for Cern and Burb. Cern takes out Xatu, Burb handles Executor, Cern one-shots Slowbro with a clutch crit, and then takes out Jinx and the second Xatu. Burb starts us off for Koga and takes out Ariados, despite a scary amount of double teams. Asteroid carries the rest, starting with Muck, despite a potentially problematic Minimize. Man, Koga's team is just meant to annoy you. Fortress is scary due to explosion, but never uses it. Crobat spams double team, but Asteroid takes it out with a crit and finishes off the battle with Venomoth. Bruno's next, and I don't expect it to go this way. Burb starts off and takes out Hitmontop once I realize I need to play around Detect, but it required a heal midway through. Mudkip handles Onix and takes out Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan too. I heal Mudkip when Machamp shows up just to be safe, twice even, but... I don't respect the crit, and Mudkip dies. That's bad. Like, really bad. I should have switched Burb in. It's relatively bulky and was at full health. Burb would have survived. It takes out Machamp. Karen is the match I'm most afraid of, but I still don't expect this. Muscle took out Umbreon, who is very, very tanky. Burb handles Vileplume and Gengar despite a Lick Paralysis and a Curse, which mandates a switch, and leads to Asteroid, who takes out Murkrow, but not before taking some scary damage from Feint Attack, and then Houndoom crunches Asteroid to death. This is also really bad. Both my Earthquake users are gone, and I'm going to need another serious pivot. That's assuming I even get through Lance. Muscle takes a ton of damage from Houndoom while doing decent damage itself, but it's too unsafe. Burb finishes Houndoom off with Fly. Now it's time for Lance. This battle is actually incredible. Cern handles Gyarados, but I was definitely expecting a one-shot. I was surprised Gyarados survived. Thankfully, it just uses Rain Dance, which does not help Lance in the slightest. Next is Dragonite. At this point, I'm spending a long time thinking about my options. Getting out of this battle without casualties is going to be hard. I send in Burb while Dragonite uses Safeguard, a safe switch in. Fly does decent damage, and Outrage doesn't. It's a bit of a loop, and Lance burns a full restore. Burb uses Sacred Fire and hopes for a burn and gets it. I use a Hyper Potion on Burb just to be safe and am rewarded with another Safeguard. Burb uses Flash to get a bit more of an edge. I'm anticipating another full restore but trying to avoid it, which I do. Dragonite goes down to Fly. The second Dragonite comes out, lower level this time. Burb is running low on PP. I should have brought an Elixir. Burb and Dragonite exchange flashes and thunder waves. I have to heal so many paralyses. Dragonite uses Hyper Beam, which doesn't do much. Another Sacred Fire, no burn this time. I heal Burb while Dragonite recharges, which keeps it plenty safe from another Hyper Beam. This is my last Sacred Flame PP. Come on, burn baby burn. Yes, one more Fly takes Dragonite down. Dragonite number 3. Cern is a relatively safe pick, assuming it's the electric-focused Dragonite. Cern gets paralyzed right away, but I again thought ahead. Paralysis Cure Berry. Then I throw it right back at Dragonite, and then get paralyzed again. I take a chance on Supersonic and am rewarded. Hyper Beam hits, but doesn't do much damage. I use another Paralyze heal while Dragonite is recharging. I use Sonic Boom to get an idea of how much health it has, but I should have just Thunder Shocked from the beginning. Then it hits itself with Confusion, and CERN hits it with Thundershock. Dragonite is low now. Another Hyper Beam. CERN is dangerously low. Time for a heal during recharge, and a final Thundershock takes out Dragonite. Charizard shows up. This is scary. There's not really a safe switch in. Burb is a little low, but it is bulky. It also has no PP. I'm doing a lot of thinking. I decide I gotta take a risk. Thundershock it is, but Charizard hits first with Flamethrower. CERN lives with 1 HP. CERN stocks are shooting for the stars, and Charizard is low. I switch in Burb, who takes a hit, but it does basically nothing. There's 1 PP left for Fly, and Burb takes the kill. Aerodactyl comes out, and I realize I have a problem. This is very unsafe for Burb, and CERN is too low health. It's up to Muscle. It gets hit by Rock Slide, but takes very little damage. I heal up CERN just in case. My stomach drops as Aerodactyl uses Wing Attack, but Muscle survives. It would not have survived a crit. CERN's back in. Wing Attack does nothing. Hyper Beam does nothing. Thundershock takes Aerodactyl out. And I'm the champion. So depending on your definition of winning, I may or may not have just beaten my first Nuzlocke, but not in my eyes. Kanto is technically the post-game of Gold and Silver, but I beat Red as a kid, and so that's my personal goal. This Nuzlocke isn't one yet, and it won't be unless I take Red down. But now I need to do another pivot. I consider putting all my water HMs on Dragonair, but that's pretty limiting. So instead, I again invoke the duplication hack. I head over to Cherry Grove City where I catch a Staryu named Patrick, and I give it the XP share. I put Bruce the Gligar on my team for some HM coverage, and onwards to Kanto I go. Even when I was a kid, I always felt the Kanto section of Gold, Silver, and Crystal seemed empty. Before replaying Gold, I wasn't sure if that was just me misremembering, but that definitely isn't the case. The developers couldn't do a lot with Kanto due to hardware limitations, and that's also probably why the caves are so small in this game. It's actually a wonder that it's even there in the first place. Still, it's a little jarring. There's very few trainers, the Pokemon are all the levels you'd find in Red, Blue, and Yellow, and there's a little story, but not much. Even the gym mechanics don't exist anymore, at least not really. Additionally, the level curve gets even more confusing. You can't go to Kanto proper until you've beaten the Indigo League, and yet the Kanto gym levels are almost all lower than Lance, which is why I had to go with an adapted level curve, otherwise I would have needed an almost entirely new team to follow the curve properly. Each of the gym leaders would fit well as Elite Four members themselves, with Blue as the champion, rather than continuations of the level curve. I wonder if they couldn't have continued with a more progressive curve while adding some extra trainers throughout the routes for some extra XP, because the curve halts after Lance and skyrockets when you head to Red, but the developers probably figured you'd be using the same team throughout the game, so the XP curve might actually be okay. Suffering Nuzlocke losses made this hard to assess. I'll be able to better tell in my upcoming Crystal video. With all that said, these teams are mean. They're definitely a step up from the Johto gym leaders, and even the Elite Four and Lance to an extent, and some of them surprised me. Let's get into it. Lieutenant Surge isn't too bad. I use Machoke and give it an X speed to avoid explosion, a lesson that I chose not to learn from. Earthquake provides a near sweep, but there was still some stress with Raichu due to a Thunder and Paralysis. After a quick jaunt over to Saffron, it's time for Sabrina. Burb sweeps. I taught it Shadow Ball for this purpose alone. Reflect threw me off a bit, but I should have just been spamming Shadow Ball the whole time anyway. Then it's a quick ride to Celadon for Erica, which Burb again sweeps. Now I have a bit of confusion about where to go. There's a little quest I need to do to restore functionality to the power plant, which unlocks not only the rest of Kanto, but also the ability to go back to Johto. Well, without having to go through Victory Road, which admittedly isn't that big of a deal because it's so small. Anyway, I head to Cerulean City in order to do just that. I encounter a rocket grunt that speaks in broken English. He says he's from Johto, which suggests Johtonians and Cantonians speak different languages. Nice little detail. Then I interrupt Misty's date, which I always found funny as a kid despite not understanding what was going on. She seriously needs to chill. I also realize that Staryu will never evolve because of the Evolution Stone quest. I need specific Pokemon to give to Bill's grandpa, and I can't get them because of the first encounter rule. Oof, not great. Time for the gym. Misty is surprisingly hard. Cern takes out Golduck easily, but not without some scary surf damage. I was confident Cern was faster though. Then I have a problem. Quagsire. I don't really have an answer, so Iroh it is. The switch allowed me to safely heal up Cern in exchange for a potentially problematic Rain Dance. Dragon Breath serves me well, but I have to be safe. Heals are a constant necessity. Lapras is immediately scary, very dangerous for Iroh, so out comes Cern. Blizzard does decent damage despite being resisted, but I get lucky with a Thundershock crit that one-shots Lapras. Thankfully. Starmie's up last. It immediately confuses Cern, and thus begins a long, drawn-out back and forth of heals, Thundershocks, Confuse Rays, Surfs, more heals, more Thundershocks, so on and so forth. Cern is in serious danger, and I can't risk a crit. It genuinely takes somewhere around 6 or 7 turns for me to even successfully damage Starmie, and it uses Flip and Recover. This is what I mean when I say these teams are mean. They're meant to mess with you. Every Pokemon has very thoughtful combinations of attacks to make each battle that isn't a pure sweep very annoying and treacherous. But finally, after many more turns, Cern takes down Starmie. That was stressful. It's so late in the game, any loss would be devastating. I deliver the machine part that I collected from Cerulean Gym, and I head down the cycling path to Fuchsia. Along the way, I get a random call from Professor Elm telling me about Pokerus. I wonder why that happened at this point. Oh, and I miss an opportunity to catch a Murkrow, which should have been priority number 1. This moment would come back to haunt me. Anyway, time for Janine. I'm really not worried. Her team has the lowest levels in all of Kanto, and they're all even lower than Will's team from the Elite Four. It should be a pretty clean sweep. Oh god. This is bad. This is really bad. The rest of the battle is a sweep, but I lost Cern. Arguably my strongest Pokemon, gone. My Cern stocks crash. This feels almost unrecoverable, and it's because I didn't respect the encounter. I'm such a dodo bird! I've already learned this lesson. How many times have there been near deaths due to self-destruct? Muscle taught me the importance of X items in Vermilion City. They could have saved Cern. 2 or 3 X specials and I would have been one-shotting those Weezing, and that crit would never have happened. I place Cern in the graveyard with a very heavy heart, and take out Lady the Flaffy for another attempt at a pivot. I'm not gonna lie, I'm feeling pretty defeated right now. Almost the entirety of my original team is gone. All I have left is Muscle. Cern was my financial portfolio, but Muscle has been my rock. I keep moving. There's no reason to give up, but I do start to question if this is going to happen, if I have what it takes to beat Red at this point. I need to get through this Snorlax, which leads me on a wild goose chase of finding this girl's Clefairy doll because I forgot to add the radio app to my Pokegear all the way back in Goldenrod. So I need to unlock the magnet train, but that's okay. I need to go to the department store to buy a Thunder Punch TM for Iroh. Along the way, Lady evolves into Ampharos, and I miss catching Snorlax, which could have been very helpful. But here we are, time for Brock, who is totally swept by Iroh, including the gym trainers. Then I head for Mount Moon, which is so much smaller in this game. It's time for Dodo, who is also really easy. Burb just completely sweeps. Honestly, it felt a bit like cheating again, but it gives me a little calm. Between Iroh and Burb, Red seems possible. They'll be a decently appropriate level by then as well. Now it's time to surf to Cinnabar. Iroh completely sweeps Blaine, after which there are some more trainers to face and some grinding at Victory Road. And then it's time for Blue, and I don't really know what to say about this one. I'm just gonna show it. Iroh is my answer to most of the fight, and a good answer at that. It was largely a sweep, but Alakazam and Executor were answered by Burb, and again, it's a good answer. Yet, here we go again. I don't respect the encounter. Executor gets a crit with an Egg Bomb, and Burb is just too low. I could have spent just one turn healing Burb up while Iroh was in play, or 2 turns to heal them both. I lose Burb, and that's maybe game over. I think it's game over. I've lost all hope at this point. I don't think red is possible anymore, and the most frustrating part is Iroh handles Executor just fine. A needless death. Wasteful. I place Burb, a legendary Pokemon, so inherently powerful that I wouldn't even normally use it in a casual playthrough, in the graveyard. So at this point, I'm just disappointed in myself. Totally disappointed. I've lost almost all my best Pokemon, and I've lost a huge number of answers to Red's team. My boxed Pokemon aren't going to help much either. But I soldier on. I take out Dino the Onix from my box, and on my way to Mount Silver, I catch a Ponyta and name it Caramel, at the direct request of my son. It evolves when I'm not recording, and now it's time to grind. I grind, and I grind, and I grind. I get Iroh and Muscle to mid-60s, and the rest to low 50s. I don't know if I subconsciously lose motivation, or if I genuinely thought this would be enough. I say that, but I actually still think it was enough, because I remember beating Red when I was younger without sky-high leveled Pokemon. I decide it's time. I have a plan. Dino goes first. Pikachu can only damage Dino with Quick Attack, and I have Sandstorm and Bind to whittle Pikachu down, along with using up Red's full restores. Dino will die afterward, but it's the end of the game. Iroh handles Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard. My only concern is Blastoise's Blizzard. I have to hope Thunder Punch is enough. Muscle handles Snorlax. The fighting moves should be enough, especially if Snorlax uses Rest, and Red is already out of full restores. For Espeon, well, I'll have to figure it out on the fly. It's the lowest level Pokemon, and it has a base defense stat of 60, which isn't terrible, but isn't what I would call good. As long as I use a strong physical attacker, I should be on solid ground. But man, I sure wish I had caught that Murkrow. It would be immune to both Mud Slap and Psychic, and Swift wouldn't do enough damage to one-shot it as long as I train it enough, but that's the way it is. No more dilly-dallying. The battle starts. The plan starts off swimmingly. Dino whittles Pikachu down and uses up Red's full restores. It's a very long process. Espeon immediately kills Dino. There was never any doubt. I decide the best option is Iroh. Sky-high attack stat, pretty high defensive stats, very high HP. It's got the Dragon Claw, which I now know is bugged and doesn't do anything. It's my highest level Pokemon. Arrogance. Espeon hits Iroh with Psychic, and Iroh lives with 1 health. Outrage should one-shot Espeon, but it doesn't. In fact, Espeon survives with plenty of health, and it hadn't even set up Reflect yet. Hi, Future 2 Dens here. Prior to the physical special split in Gen 4, all dragon moves were considered special, including Outrage. I had forgotten that, hence my mistake. At least Iroh is alive. It's not over. It's over. I try, but Espeon immediately kills Caramel, then Lady. Patrick surprises me by outspeeding Espeon and taking it out with Surf, but it's too late. All I have is Patrick at level 52 and Muscle at level 63, and I still have Venusaur, Blastoise, Charizard, and Snorlax. There's no way. And as I suspect, Venusaur annihilates Patrick, and after taking down Venusaur, Charizard incinerates Muscle. The longest running member of my team falls last. I white out and deposit my entire team into the graveyard. And that's that. I fail. I was a fool. Hindsight is always so clear. There were so many options to save my Pokemon throughout the playthrough. A bit more preparation, a bit more planning, a bit more patience, and I absolutely could have beaten Red had I just respected the encounter a bit more. Heck, if I had just caught Murkrow, it could have handled Espeon and who knows where I'd be. But despite it all, this Nuzlocke was incredibly fun. I learned a great many things for the future. I need to utilize my resources better, like X items and even more intentional use of vitamins. I need to fully respect the level cap. That means getting all the Pokemon I need to the cap before trying the next challenge, though I do think getting all my Mons to 81 before Red would have resulted in a pure sweep. I need to accept that losses are going to happen from the very beginning and learn to pivot from the very beginning. I still wonder about having to grind versus using infinite rare candies. Is grinding part of the challenge? It really is a waste of time at a certain point. On the other hand, if you have infinite rare candies, pivoting becomes much less of an obstacle. If I can just instantly level any Pokemon to the current cap, then where's the friction? I don't even think it would cause a problem with EV training if that's something you want to do. I just don't know. I failed my first Nuzlocke, but this isn't over. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Let me know if you've ever tried a Nuzlocke and how that went in the comments, and please consider liking and subscribing if you've enjoyed this. I've also opened up YouTube memberships if you're interested, and I have a 100% free Patreon with an optional pledge tier where I'm going to be posting updates and behind the scenes tidbits. Feel free to check it out. Thank you so much for watching.